Hey everybody, thanks for coming out. So today I want to talk about basically optimizing your infrastructure spend. I'm sure we're all spending just a little too much about that. And there are some good ways that we can get a hold of it. So as we said, I work for Plaid. We're sort of like the financial backbone. If you use Venmo or TransferWise or almost any financial app, you're a customer of us indirectly. You know, as for myself, I'm an infrastructure engineer. If you don't know what we do all the really awful, boring stuff that no one wants to touch, but is absolutely essential to keep your company running. So hire more infrastructure engineers. So I'm sure everyone's thinking like, you know, you've been told, hey, costs are a problem, we spend too much. Do I need to do anything? And, you know, maybe you can try to like pawn it off. But like, let's just jump right immediately to the brass tacks. If you're spending $30 an hour at Amazon, that's one employee. Just very simple. If you can knock that down, you can then go out and hire someone else. And the reality is I would rather hire people because they can do stuff, whereas the infrastructure just sits there and requires my attention. So that is what I really want everyone to think about. You're trading infrastructure for other things that you want to buy, and that's probably going to be engineers. So I always like to say, like, what would a 10% reduction mean for you and for your company? If you're spending over $100,000 a month on your infrastructure, you need to start now. Maybe you can't dedicate a team yet, but you need to really get started on this. If you move into the $1 million a month figure, hire a team. You can't not afford to hire a team. They will pay for themselves and more people. You know, if you're smaller than that, and, you know, I'm sure there's lots of people here who are, you know, at their startup, they're 10,000 a month, 1,000. Start now, but develop the good habits. This will save you a lot of time and money later on that you can then use to really dig into this as you grow. So let's think about like how Amazon makes their money. You can sing along if you know the song, but like, what is the core thing that Amazon makes their money on? Basically, everything they sell is like a little bit extra. It's all incremental. Everything has a price. So if you know what they're charging you for, you can then think about how you want to optimize that. So remember, just everything is extra at Amazon. But they're not going to say, oh, everything's extra and all this. What their value proposition really is they want to sell you reliability and scalability and performance. That's what their salespeople are going out for. And you can very easily tell that that is what they're marketing. I have metrics for everything down to the second going back years. If I want my cost data, it's 8-hour delay, 24-hour delay. It's wrong. It's aggregated by the hour. They make it easy to spend. If I want to spin up 1,000 machines, nothing. You know, you just start, ask, go. But if you want to get told how much you're spending, well, it'll be a little while. So I'm sure you're all now very rapidly like looking at what your bill is and what Amazon is charging you. So I'm sure you're wondering like, okay, how did you get into this situation? And it's kind of simple. Like, you didn't get here in one big move. You got here in a lot of small steps. Basically, you've been debugging by adding resources to your system. When you first started out, you know, your mom just signed up for your service, so your user base doubled. You know, you had high latency, your SQL was slow, just add resources. And when you're small, that's the way to do it. Just add a bit more resources, 4 cents an hour, who cares? As you grow, that doesn't work anymore. Some of you out here are probably in a situation where if you add a CPU core to all your services, that's $1 million a year, just like that. And it's so easy to do. Amazon will happily do it. I'm sure all your management tools, it's just you change one number in your config, off you go. And the next thing you notice is, oh, that's a lot of money that's disappearing down the hole. So to this end, I want to introduce a new idea. Good code is cheap code. Cost is basically going to be a lagging indicator of quality. And it's not that the systems were built badly, but it's the reality of working now that doesn't really match how you want to work. So if you find your most expensive services, I will bet they are going to be the ones that are causing you problems constantly. They don't scale well. They're hard to maintain. They're slow to deploy because you have to send out hundreds or thousands of these pods. And they don't even scale well. You have to keep adding resources because, it's Christmas, something went wrong. So the thing we really want to think about is you're paying more for worse software. You're paying for software that is paging you in the middle of the night because it doesn't really work that well. And even if you can't convince people to fix software because it's expensive, if you can say, oh, it'll be better for us, it'll be less maintenance, it'll annoy us less, that's a great way to sell it to people. So when you want to bring this to your company, you need to think about it as a sea change. This is not a small little thing. This is going to be a radically new way of thinking. Every engineer is going to need to think about cost. Not obsessively, but a little bit. You can't just have one person doing it. They'll do it for a bit. They'll make one step forward. The company as a whole will take 2 steps back. They'll burn out and they'll quit. But you need your engineers individually just, hey, my service needs to be performant and reliable and scalable and monitorable. And also, we care about how much this is going to cost to run. You want to provide forward-looking tools. Like, probably right now, your engineers don't have a way of determining this. They don't have a way of looking into any of this. It's just, hey, it runs, it works, the error rate's fine, whatever. You're going to need to build and provide tools for them to figure this out. Like I said, this is going to be a long process. This is not, hey, we're going to focus on this for a sprint. We're not going to focus on this for a quarter. This is kind of going to be a forever project. You do a little bit, you move the needle ahead, just step by step by step. One of the best ways I've found to win friends with this is you start a hackathon. Just get a few engineers, get a room, just a few days, and start coming up with ideas of what you could fix. Hey, if we turn this on, we could save this much money. If we adjust this, we could save this much money. Why don't we ever compress our logs? Maybe we should fix that. Go out, grab a fun name, Project 1 Million, buy me a Tesla. You'd be amazed at what you could find. We had some ideas of, hey, let's see if we can find 3%, 5% in our budget. We came back with 15% in 3 days. And that's just for people who'd never done this before. And then you can go up to senior management to staff this and say, look what we found starting from scratch. Imagine if we actually funded this sort of work. Next, you need a cost experts group. Now, these are people who really understand your cloud architecture and what you're being billed for. You want to be consultants. So my favorite example is S3, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. We all know you pay money to store data in there, but no one really realizes you pay money to access the data in there too. So if you build your system just a little bit wrong, you will pay a fortune in access fees. So you want your cost experts group to say hey, this is a good idea, but what you're doing has these implications. You want to adjust it this way. You really want to help people get to their goal and get to their destination. Really back away from the idea of being of the fun police. If your group says no to everything, you say there's no budget, no. First off, no one's going to come to you, so you can't help them. But then they'll just go around you. We're all familiar with shadow IT. There are shadow costs. People will build something in the worst way, but because they don't have to talk to you, you can't stop them, you can't help them. So, and they'll just wander off. And then you'll have to go find these problems and then go fix them. Next, you really need analysis data. By default, all these cloud services give you really terrible, ungranular stuff to work on. You want to start on this now, even before you start fixing things, because all this data isn't retrospective. It only starts once you start implementing cost tracking and cost tagging. Amazon is tagging. Everyone else has a similar sort of thing, but the idea is you want to be able to assign costs to categories. For your organization, you want to think about what you need first. Product, customer, vertical, group, organization, service. These are all great places to start. You want to try to find categories that are in the tens to hundreds of count of cardinality. Less than 10, and you're kind of be yeah, production is 95% of our cost. That doesn't help. much, as you get into the hundreds, it starts being, well, we've fine-grained this out so broadly, you can't really come up with good actionable ideas at scale. Finally, my favorite saying is make the right thing the easy thing. So you need this tagging and ownership and tracking to be built in by default. If someone wants to spin up a database, it has to be set up like this. It has to have all this information in it and ready to go from the start. If you try to track this in like afterwards or in arrears or make people promise to do this, they won't. You will pull your hair out. So if you have a linter that can just say, sorry, you can't turn this on until you add these fields, that's how to do it. So, you've got your data, things are going well, you've got some ideas. How do you really expand this out to the rest of your organization? So you want to start with insights. So you want to have an idea of roughly where you can go. You've probably started with a lot of just, we spend a lot of money on computers, where can we go from there? So just develop enough insights so where you can plan your next move. You don't need perfect insight or information. You can have a known unknown of 40% of your budget. That's okay. Your goal is to basically plan enough to plan what your next moves are. You don't have to plan, the rest of the organization for the quarter or the year or the decade. Just build enough to get started and keep moving. What you want to build, you want to focus it on being durable. One-off Excel analyses are great, except if you want to repeat them or see if they've changed, the work will just drive you mad. So build something that you can use and keep using rather than one-off, hey, this was a neat idea. And again, establish policies that enforce ownership. Make it hard to get around. Make it impossible if you can. You want people to be told right up front, hey, this is required. Not a management directive, but even just a linter right at the problem where hey, I want to do this. System comes back and says, okay, what service owns this? What database owns this? What customer owns this? Who is going to get billed for this later on? Otherwise, you're just going to spend your time with all this unknown spend. When you have enough information, you're probably going to have this nice long list. You can pick things out of that. Don't let people try to argue of, hey, there's this great big unknown field. What do we do with this? Maybe we should look in there first. The fact is, once you have a list of things you can fix, you just need to evaluate them on, are they worth it? Maybe there are great things to fix in that unknown field, but you have good ideas now that you can get done. Even if someone says, hey, we're too small, and I've heard that way too often, small fixes aggregated over the whole company add up really quickly. I guarantee you, if you find $1,000 a month per engineer, that will massively move your budget for an organization of any scale, but $1,000 a month isn't that much in terms of infrastructure spend. Finally, when you're picking what to do, pick the easy ones first. I know this sounds trite, but if you can do it in 5 minutes, do it. If you can do it in a day, just do it. Don't spend a lot of time trying to argue what is most important or what is least. Easy wins are the best. If you have to negotiate with other teams, that's a lot slower because they have their own priorities, they have their own KPIs. You want to pick what is easy, get it done, get it solved. If the customers are affected, kick those to the back of the list. Getting customers migrated, getting them upgraded, that is hard. So you basically, it's a slow process. I'm sure there's tons of value you can get out of the easier things. And remember, fixes you defer are still costing you money. So if you can pick the easy ones quickly, you're better off, grabbing them. There's probably going to be someone that says, hey, there's a great big, huge savings here. But if it's going to take you a quarter or two to fix it, you could probably earn just as much by picking up smaller things quickly and early. And really, don't ignore small wins, because at the end of the day, all dollars count the same in the final spreadsheet. So I'm sure, everyone here can think how much could my service cost? $10 an hour, $100? Because no one knows, genuinely no one knows. So I know you have an RFC process. I guarantee you everyone's got one. So make people make an estimate for how much their service is going to cost. By default, Amazon has this cost calculator. It's the worst thing ever. Don't use it. Don't tell anyone it exists. I think of myself as a bit of an expert. I don't even use it. It is just so hard to use, and it's inscrutable. People will give up. So write your own. Like, we made a single-page Excel sheet, and we asked people to fill out values. And we focus on what they know about and what they care about. So request rate, memory, database storage, like S3 storage, things that they would know and can reasonably estimate. And then we just add on a tax for the indirect costs. Like, we don't make people estimate their logging volume or their metrics. We just say, it's about 50% of what you're spending on your base service. Close enough. Like, this is it. It's super simple. Anyone here could fill this out in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And this gives us not a perfect answer, but if you could go out and say, hey, my service is $100 a month, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, hopefully not a million, you can then say, like, yeah, this is worth it. Yeah, this isn't. So many people have been like, oh, I'm going to spend this much money. Is that a concern? Is this pocket change? But the idea that people can then say, oh, I at least have an idea of where I'm going versus launching and hoping for the best. You know, next, when you go find your problematic services, your teams aren't going to know where to start. You know, you tell them, hey, you should like cut down on this a bit. They just don't know. It's like, so what we've done is we've just created this sort of like template doc of like, here are 6, 8 possible fixes you could do. And, you know, we fill in what we think you could save if you do this, but for the most part, it's the same for everyone. Teams love it. It's just, hey, you know, they think it's very white glove service. It really isn't, because all problems are the same. But it also puts them in control. So rather than saying you must do X, they can say, oh, well, we want to do this or we want to do that. We think this is best for us. We've even added in some things that no one's ever going to do this. No one's ever going to like port their code to a different architecture. And then someone did. So, you know, they chose it, they did it, they implemented it, they loved it. Like, they were really happy with that because they were allowed to make the choice. It wasn't forced on them. So what sort of problems are you going to sort of inevitably have? It happens to everyone. What's going to go wrong? And you're going to have what's called a cost blowout. And so what happens is you're going along, and then all of a sudden, oh, our spend has gone up by 10%, which is a lot because it's probably blown away all the work you've done. It's not going to be someone saying, hey, I need 1,000 servers, because people know that's a big deal. It's going to be something that's done by accident. And so what is that? So someone will turn on a security scanner, which will consume all the logs in a really terrible way. Oops, now you're spending millions of dollars there. You know, someone's going to say, oh, I need to like add, you know, 1 CPU core to this giant service. You go up again. Some will turn on debug logging on this one thing, and now every HTTP request you get is just being dumped into the logs. That's way too much. So the way you want to deal with this is you have to be quickly reactive. If you can catch this within a few days, most teams are really, sorry, losing my microphone. Most teams are really willing to like roll back their change. Hey, it was a bug. Hey, it was a small problem. It's not a big deal for them. If it grows on for weeks or months, you're going to have a challenge where people, they don't want to roll it back. You know, hey, it's working. Hey, we're getting all this value out of this. Why should we roll back now? It's, you know, we've got everything we wanted out of this. We have to like plan this. And so instead of a really quick fix, you have to spend their time, you have to spend your time. It is a huge deal for you and for everyone else. So at some core like takeaways, what I really want to think about is emphasize that all dollars Thank you. We all good?
Yes.
Okay, so all dollars are basically the same. Pick the easy wins and make friends. if people like you, they're much more willing to like help you. So try to make things easy, and don't pick big fights when you're first starting out. Start cost monitoring just as soon as you absolutely can. The better the data you have now, the better things are going to be for you in the future. Trust me, it'll save you just a massive amount of hair pulling if you have 6 months of data versus 6 days. Really emphasize to teams that cheap software is good software. It scales better, it's more reliable, it pages less frequently. The best software we have is very high performance, it's very cheap to run, and those teams just don't get paged because it just keeps working. Our most expensive software, all the time, pages us. At the end of the day, you could just say, what's a good night's sleep worth to you? And give engineers tools to understand the problems. Like, this is a radically new domain for almost everyone. They don't know why things cost this much. They don't know where to get started. Even really simple tools of, hey, this is why things cost this much, and basically where the billing starts from. Thank you so much. I believe we have like one final wrap up. If you want to come to me about like specific questions about cost, I can probably save you a lot of money. Other than that, thank you so much.